Each day, our generation and our culture views tons of media, be it newspapers, music, film, movies, and television, you name it. It has a big effect on our perceptions of people, the process of aging, and how we view aging. I will today go over the media perceptions and representations of people, young adults, teenagers, and then moving into people in the middle age, and finally, how the media represents the elderly. So we'll begin with young adults or teenagers. So when we see teenagers in the media, we see films like Project X and Mean Girls and Skins or even Jersey Shore. And it shows that teenagers are rebellious, like binge drinking, partying, being disrespectful, possibly lazy, and basically it just shows teenagers and young adults as not being contributable members to society. It often does not show that teenagers and young adults are contributing to society in a meaningful way, that they are kind, intelligent, thoughtful, possibly volunteering. It doesn't, things like that. So it likes to showcase their wild parties. And while the news may aspire to report factual pieces of information, they do have to get viewers. And so the best way to get viewers is to showcase wild headlines that are going to draw people in. And when we have young adults and teenagers like Justin Bieber, Kendall and Kylie Jenner, and Miley Cyrus being the faces of the youth, that's definitely not representative of all of the members of young adults and teenagers. And then let's move into the phase of young adults. How does the media represent specifically young adults? Well, according to the Department of Health in Australia, Professor of Ethics Howard Surcombe found that in the media, he surveyed 2,500 different newspapers looking for articles that were speaking of young adults. What he found was that 64% of those articles were talking about juvenile or delinquent crime. That's right. And when the Australian Law Reform Commission surveyed young adults, 80% of respondents believed that they were not represented accurately or if ever in the media, and definitely not in a positive way. And imagine how the audiences of the media that are getting this information change their views of how teenagers and young adults are because of what they're seeing and constantly hearing and taking in. In Scotland, when 55 newspapers were examined, the article subjects found that 40% were related to crime or delinquency, while only 15% were related to the achievements of young adults or teenagers. And that was found by the Youth Justice Reform Research Team in Glasgow. And next, when it comes to the portrayal of people in the middle age between 40 and 65 in the media, often what is seen is having a midlife crisis. We look at movies such as Steve Carell in Crazy Stupid Love, or The Dad in Mr. Incredibles, or perhaps Julia Roberts in Eat, Pray, Love, and what we see are people between 40 and 65 that are having some sort of midlife crisis, where they have to go out and date someone who is 15 or 20 years younger, divorce their spouse, go on a crazy trip, buy that Porsche that they always wanted, and it basically perpetuates these stereotypes that age is unfulfilling or unsatisfying. And according to James Cook University, the findings suggest that, this is a quote, "The negative representations of aging start well before old age, and they contribute to ageism views and behaviors." That this time in life is especially troublesome or a time of crisis. And so at James Cook University, the researchers found that comedy films about middle age show a time plagued with problems, feeding preconceptions that it is a time of crisis. It's screen comedy, they say, this is a quote, has been free to work its complex and often subversive process of revealing and commenting on the preoccupations, prejudices, and dreams of the societies that produce it. The fear of aging is showcased by these comedy films, which portray these meaningful years of life as something that is wrong or going to be troublesome for the future. Psychologists from James Cook University note that while men and women do experience changes and transitions, they do not experience perhaps any more crisis than they would in any other time during their life. Stereotyping these negative views definitely contributes to ageism, like I said, and contributes basically to our culture of being young, because while our culture, the youth are kind of seen as rebellious or maybe not as intelligent as the older generations, we see all these advertisements for anti-aging creams, looking younger, feeling younger, being younger. So next, let's move on to the representations of the elderly in the media. And we'll begin with a study that was led by the California State University at Chico. They found that older Americans over 60 were only represented 5.4% of the time in the media at all, and 4% of characters in TV shows, despite their findings that older Americans watch more television in general than the younger generation. They maybe have more time, they're retired. In Japan, Ghana, and China, according to California State University at Chico, the elder population is looked up to. They're kind of revered on. They're full of wisdom, full of life's experiences, and they have a lot to teach the younger generations. In the U.S., the media does not necessarily always perpetuate these positive stereotypes. We often see commercials, like I said, for anti-aging creams and plastic surgeries for tons of Hollywood stars. The University of Nebraska at Lincoln found that older men fared better in the media than women and often had more meaningful roles as well. They found that the elderly are often portrayed as these one-dimensional characters instead of, how the other characters that are younger are presented. And so the National Institute of Health did find that these media portrayals of the elderly are improving. So that is good news to hear, because it's important to remember that the elderly can and are still important members of society, contributing all of life's experiences in their time here that has been much longer than some of the other people here. So, and by becoming aware of how the media portrays the different stages of life and the different ages, we can kind of more critically reflect on our perceptions of age and aging, and remember that people can still be cognitive, contributable, and valuable members of society at any age, regardless of what the media may represent it as. Thank you.